It's also a new concept for Japanese people that if you're born and raised in a country, you become a person from that country. I grew up surrounded by all these local kids. Nothing about me is British. I don't feel Japanese either. But at the same time, I have the same experience as them, the same education. Even I see myself as an outsider.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Joshua. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you.
You're a content creator who is based between Japan and London. But what's interesting about you is you're born and raised here in Japan and kind of went through the whole traditional Japanese school system and experienced that. And you're here to share this and many more things that you're doing. So let's go back to the beginning. Usually I ask what brings people to Japan, but maybe in this case, it would be what brought your family to Japan.
Yeah. So my grandparents, four of my grandparents, they all moved to Hokkaido in the 50s and 60s. So my dad's parents, they moved to, I think, Sapporo in like the 50s. And they met in Sapporo and they got married there. They had my dad in London when they were back in the UK for 1 year. So that's why I get a British passport through my dad that was born in London by chance. And then my mom's parents, they came to Japan in 1960. And my parents, they met in Hokkaido and they moved, I think, but my dad moved to Tokyo area when he was like 12. But he was back in Hokkaido for work. And then that's where he met my mom and blah, blah, blah. But so they're both missionary kids, you know. And then so I'm like third generation missionary family kid. I don't know how to describe myself, but interestingly, my passport's British through my dad that was born in the UK. But it's only my grandmother that's British actually, because my dad's dad is Australian. My mom's parents are from New Zealand. So in theory, I'm supposed to be Japanese, like in like the Western way.
So if you're born here in Japan from two foreign parents that do not hold Japanese citizenship, can you be legally Japanese, or do you?
So if I recently found out that if my dad wasn't born in the UK, I would have been Japanese. But because he was born in the UK, I was able to get a British passport. But I think, technically I would have been stateless. But in that case, Japanese government gives you Japanese passport.
Interesting.
It's like the last option, and I don't think they want to do that, but they also don't want stateless people. So I don't know. Yeah.
So what did that mean for you, kind of growing up here? Was there a time when you started realizing, well, I'm kind of different than everyone else around me?
Yeah, I always knew because I also lived in the US when I was 3 to 5. So my first memory of everything is from when I lived in the US in Virginia, actually. So I knew I was a foreigner going to Japan and living in Japan as a foreigner because I knew I was different. I'm from a different country, but my parents spoke Japanese and they knew people in Japan. So in the beginning, I remember it was kind of strange that I look different and I speak English, but my family, they all seem to live in Japan. Like my aunties, uncles, they're all in Japan. I'm like, aren't we foreigners? Like I remember having that feeling. And so then I was put into Yochien, like preschool, and then everybody treated everybody was like, oh my gosh, there's a foreigner, like blah blah blah. Like they make comments, why are your eyes blue? Why do you have blonde hair? Blah blah blah. So I just knew from really young age that I was different, but at the same time I knew who I was. Like I knew that my family were not from Japan, and I knew where my grandparents are from. So I never really I was never like, oh no, I'm a foreigner, like I hate myself, blah, blah, blah. Because I also had this international school near me, like a Christian international school near me, and I would like go to their camp every summer and all that. So I did have that community close to me as well. So I never fully felt isolated or different, or I not belonging. And at the same time, I love Japanese school. Like I love my friends there. I was such a fun, like crazy student. So I never felt like I was out of place in elementary school, at least. Then I started going to international school in middle school. And then that's when I realized I had become super Japanese, and it was really hard to go into that international American community in Tokyo, like because I felt too Japanese and my humor was Japanese, and like I didn't know how to express myself in English back then.
You brought up quite a few interesting points. Let's go back a little bit to what was so interesting and good for you in the Japanese elementary school.
It was I think I was very fortunate to have really interesting, fun classmates, I guess. They were really accepting and they really loved me. I love my friends as well. And it really helped that my parents also spoke Japanese, because I know many second generation foreign kids that go to Japanese school, and yeah, and their parents don't speak Japanese, so they have to do all the paperwork. They have to read everything from the school. But my parents, they read and write and speak Japanese, so they knew what was going on. So that also made it easy. But I love all the activities in school, like ongakukai or like undokai, or like I loved everything about it. So it was, yeah, I never, and yeah, in Japanese elementary schools are pretty fun. Like I'm people might imagine Japanese school as this really strict, like rigid place, but that's kind of starts from middle school. Like elementary school is like very much like freedom and like do whatever you want to do. Like it is kind of strict, but it's also like more expressive and you can wear whatever you want.
In many foreign countries, I'm gonna say maybe more in Europe and perhaps North America, they are trying new educational methods and try this approach to teaching kids or that approach. Is there something specific used in Japan? What is the kind of general way or thought process behind the classes you have and the way teachers are sharing their knowledge?
I mean, it's all about just copying what's on the board in Japan. And but we did have like debate classes as well, like 20 years ago. Like we would like choose a topic and we would debate. I remember the topic was, do we prefer the city or the countryside? And I was for the city, of course. And like we had a good debate. So like people say like we're not in Japanese schools, you don't really teach debating and all that stuff. But like they were trying, like they were kind of doing their own like thing, but at the same time, like it was all about groups and following the rules and like doing these activities and doing a lot of things in the same way and all that. So yeah, I don't know, but I love the cleaning time, the soji no jikan.
This is something that comes up sometimes even on mainstream media. Like, look, Japanese students clean their own classroom, they prepare their own food, or they clean up after themselves. This should be done everywhere. How was that experience like?
Like, I thought this was done in any other country, like, so I thought it was normal, but I didn't realize until I went to the international school that was pretty unusual thing. But it was pretty fun. Like, I don't know, the cleaning time was the playtime for me, actually. I would like just do whatever. Like, I would just like disappear somewhere in the school and like go play or act as if I'm cleaning in front of the teacher and just like, yeah, act in a good way. But yeah, I think cleaning up, like you kind of learn how to clean and like you learn how to serve food. And I think that's a really good thing. Like, yeah, like when I went to that international school, all my classmates, they didn't know how to clean, or they didn't know there were like people working for them to clean up after them. So it was pretty shocking in the beginning. So thank God I got that experience. You're more disciplined, I think. So I do think the West should implement this system.
And you mentioned that once you went to this international school from middle school onwards, right?
Yeah.
This is when you really felt a difference, because primary school, Japanese primary school, has been the norm for you. And suddenly you're in an international context, and the humor wasn't the same, the way of acting, the cleaning, and these kind of basic disciplines. How did you experience that part of your education?
Yeah, it was pretty tough because I really didn't. I did speak English, but I only I wouldn't actively speak English, and nothing was coming in to my ears. Like whatever the teacher said, it was just not coming in. And also like I felt like I had to be very American. I had to become more expressive, and I was a very expressive kid, but I had to be, I don't know, something was really off, because this gets into a really deep topic, but that international school I went to, it was initially made for missionary kids that were based in Japan, and their parents would send them there. And so they had this they had this mentality where America's on top of Japan. America's better than Japan. We teach you what the answer is, kind of attitude. So in my mind, thinking back now, in a way they were kind of anti-Japan. So you couldn't really speak Japanese in school. Whenever you spoke Japanese in school, like the teachers would be like, don't speak Japanese, like in a really strict way. So it was kind of hard for me not being able to speak Japanese. Like whenever, like my natural base language is Japanese. So whenever I was like, can I borrow your pen? Like penkashite or something, like teachers would be like, why do you speak Japanese? So I think that was the most difficult part, like not being able to speak my native language in my own country. What in my house was like 10 minutes away, and I'm like, I can't speak the language, like my own language. Like that, I think that was the hardest part. And then after 2 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I actually went back to Japanese school and like re-entered Japanese school from third year of middle school. Then I went into Japanese high school.
That's pretty cool. Japanese language is something you just described as your native language. Is it something from young age your parents would speak to you just in Japanese, or is it something you picked up by going to school or primary school? How was Japanese language education for you?
My parents spoke to me in English, but the language I would use with my siblings would be Japanese, of course. And I went to Japanese schools. So of course, I was speaking Japanese. I would speak Japanese to my neighbors. I grew up in a danchi, like a council estate in Saitama. So I grew up with many, many kids, surrounded by all these local kids. So of course I spoke Japanese, and all my cousins in the area, they all spoke Japanese. So it naturally became my native language. But my parents, they really made sure they only spoke English, even though they speak Japanese. Like my mom's mother tongue is Japanese, but she stick to English for us.
I guess that's the best way to go if you want your children to grow up bilingual, right? If your household has one language and outside is the other language, you can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, but it was really hard to study English with my mom, like from 10, I think. Yeah, it was. I hated studying English, and I just hated English so much growing up. I was like, I would make any excuse to not speak English. I was like, whenever I saw a foreigner, I'd be like hiding behind my mom, and I'd be like, hi, yes, no, kind of thing. Yeah.
You call Japan your country. You were born here. In terms of identity, how do you feel today, having grown through this kind of Japanese education system and now kind of spending time between both London and Tokyo? Do you feel more British? Do you feel more Japanese? Or do you just have accepted both in a way?
I feel like so after living in London, I feel like I realized I'm not British at all. I mean, I tried my best to become British in a way, but nothing about me is British, only my ethnicity. I'm Scottish by ethnicity, and I accepted that I'm not from the UK. It's just my grandma that's from the UK or my ancestors from Scotland. But at the same time, I don't fully feel Japanese either. Like, of course not. I had a different education as them, like different mentality in the house. So but I also lived in the US. So I feel like I'm somewhere in between all those countries, and I just focus on myself now. Like, what do I feel? Who am I? All those things. So I don't really root my identity into one country. It's just who I am, what I believe, what I love, who I love, that kind of thing, I guess. Yeah.
When reading on some forums online and so on, maybe less so kind of foreign children born in Japan, but like hafu is a common topic that comes up, and they always a question about like sending them to international school, sending them to public Japanese school, and the question of acceptance and so on. In your experience, is this something people need to consider, or should they just let kind of things go naturally and see how things happen, how the kid adapts to either system?
I've talked to so many hafus, so many foreigners that grew up in Japan, and it really depends on the person. It really, really depends on the person. Like, some kids, they loved international school. Some kids, they love Japanese school. Some kids, they wanted to go to international school so much, but they couldn't go, or like vice versa. So it really, really depends on the kid. So what I always say is like, just listen to your kid. Just what's your child saying? What are they saying? Like, listen to them. Like, because my parents listened to me when I said I want to go back to Japanese school. They stopped me initially. They were like, no, please stay in the international school. Please stay one more year. Please stay. And I did. But I was like, at the end, I was like, please send me back to Japanese school. And they were like, sure. Okay, let's do it. So you just need to listen to your kid, I feel like. But at the same time, I think the ideal way is to send your kid to the local school for elementary school. But from middle school, I feel like international school would be more ideal. But also teach them English during elementary school is how I think that's the best way, because I know a lot of international school kids that don't really speak the local language and they don't know how to connect with the country they grew up in. Because I know a lot of my classmates, they're born and raised in Japan, but their Japanese wasn't as good as mine, and they saw Japanese people as this really like aliens almost, even though they live in Japan, or they didn't know how to connect with them. That's because they didn't get Japanese education, So that's pretty sad, I think. So send them to elementary school, then maybe if you can afford it, or if that's what you want, send them to international school from middle school, is what I always say.
Is the transition between both systems easy in terms of usually every country will have its own kind of grading system and a certain number of years of primary school, certain number of years of middle school. So it's not always possible to just change from one grade to another in the different system. Is this like easy from international school to Japanese school?
Yeah, it was actually easy because Japanese schools, they start from April, right? So there's only like few months difference. And I think I remember graduating from Japanese school, then just enrolling into the international school after 2 weeks or something from April. And it was really smooth. Like, I just joined the class. And I think we get new students almost every week or every other week or every month, like from somewhere in the world. And
interesting. So they can just pick up the curriculum wherever.
Yeah, wherever. So I remember like enrolling from like mid-April or something, and I just had to like start like suddenly in English, like, and it was pretty tough the first year, I guess, or 2 months at least. But yeah, like, I think most kids will be fine if you speak English. So I think parents should definitely teach them English, like if they
before that.
yeah, for sure.
You said that when you changed the school system, originally you suddenly felt more Japanese because your humor and so on.
Mm.
What are these kind of Japanese cultural aspects that have become second nature to you that you don't really think about, but that you realize that are like, this is very Japanese, and you kept that with you?
Like how I communicate with people, like Japanese is all about fully listening to the other person, or like catchball, like catchball, like I want to catchball. Like you ask something, they answer, they ask something back. Like there's like a clear, like, you know, catchball. How do you say?
Like everyone has a turn to speak, so to say.
Yeah. And everybody's like actually listening to you. But I feel like in the US or the UK, like you kind of like not talk over each other, but you kind of add information and you just like talk about yourself out of nowhere. And it's just like, but in Japan, I feel like you wait until the other person asks you about yourself. So I think that's one thing that I realized this way later, but this is what I realized thinking back now, that how I communicated was different, and my humor, like I was watching Japanese TV a lot, and then I think the humor, I really didn't get the American like humor, or like I didn't know what was going on in the pop scene and all that, and I just really had to learn from nowhere. Like I had to listen to Britney Spears or whatever, and it's just, you know, or maybe not Britney Spears at that time, but I've heard Justin Bieber. He was big when I was in middle school, so yeah, all that. And so I really had to manage two big countries at the same time, US and Japan, and they have like two biggest pop scenes, right? So I mean, thinking back now, I was really privileged. Like I got to know two worlds at the same time, but I feel like that is quite a lot for a 12-year-old, I guess. So yeah, but I don't know what was so Japanese about me. I don't know. I think I was more reserved in like social settings, I guess. Yeah. Maybe.
Less expressive and outgoing than maybe some of the American counterparts.
Yeah.
Eventually, you continued school and you stayed in the Japanese school system for your high school, which is quite famous for all its activities, right? You have the baseball clubs and so on. Is this something you took part in?
Yeah, I actually did volleyball in school, and I actually made it from zero. So there were no volleyball, like, I don't know, male volleyball team. So I made it with my friends, and our coach, the coach for the girls team, he happened to be like a really famous, important person in the Saitama Volleyball Association. So he was really happy that we made a men's volleyball team and boys volleyball team. And he was super strict, very strict. Like we had to be like, so whenever we went up to him and talked to him, if we had a scarf on, he would be like, take off your scarf. Like, do not talk to me with those fancy stuff on you.
Interesting.
So we were like, come on, sumimasen. Like we would go up, and he's like, mafura dore or something, you know. So
why is it scarf?
So in Japan, whenever you're talking to somebody older than you or like above you, you can't have anything fancy. So in his mind, scarf is something fancy, and I had a colorful one, I guess. So he was like,
interesting.
You can't look fancier than him, I guess.
And he was probably wearing sports clothes. And
yeah, exactly.
As a sports coach.
Exactly. So that's the kind of environment I was in. But at the same time, I went to a very ghetto high school. So it was fun. It was a lot of drama happening every day, like people fighting and running away. My friends running away from the teachers. Like 5 teachers would be like chasing after one student, like literally chasing after.
In the corridors, or?
Yeah, exactly. And like when they catch them, they would like surround the student like that, and they would like kind of corner him to do whatever he's doing wrong, like to fix whatever he's doing wrong. So it was pretty fun. I would like see my friends going out of the window, running away from teachers.
You're breaking down all the stereotypes of typical Japanese school.
Exactly. Yeah. But a lot of low grade high schools in Japan, or like that. I mean, I used to be, at least like 10 years ago. So I went to like really, I can make a movie out of it easily.
Is this something that is you can choose which high school to attend, or are you assigned like a district high school that you need to go to?
You can choose actually, but it really depends on your level, like your intelligence.
So they already
level.
kind of, depending on your grades that you have in middle school, you may have a better chance of attending this or that high school, and it's very selective.
Unless you go to a private school and just pay a lot of money, like you can go to wherever. I mean, if you have to pass the test, but usually if you pay a lot of money, you can go to like a nice private school. But yeah, my teacher in middle school, she was like, "You're too dumb. You can't go to you can't go to a good high school." I was trying to go to this international school, Japanese high school, but it was more international. They were really focused on English, so I really wanted to go to that one. But when I told that to my teacher, she was like, "No, you're too dumb. You just go to the local."
It's very encouraging from a teacher.
Very, very, very encouraging. And their how they graded like the test to go into that high school, like they were like double the points of English, and my English was better than other subjects, so for obvious reasons. So I thought I had a better chance to get into that high school, but she said no, you can't, because my math was terrible. Like I can't do math or science. I hate those subjects. So,
when you go to Japanese high school, like how many subjects do you study? For example, I did high school in France, and we have like 12 or 13 different topics.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And to kind of at the end of high school, we have this big exam to enter university, and we basically have to take the exam in all the fields that we took classes in. But in Germany, at least back then, for the high school exam, you only pick 3 topics that you take the exam in. So it's kind of different. How is it like in Japan?
I think you kind of cover the basics: science, math, English, Japanese,
society, social studies.
Social studies, yeah. And one more,
maybe?
History, yeah, maybe those, like 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you get graded, and then you go into high school, I guess. Yeah.
Can you choose optional courses? Like if you want to take an extra language or something like that?
Yeah, in my high school, like it was like very much like their selling point of the high school was that you can choose a lot of topics. So I actually choose advanced Japanese course. So to study more kanji and more Japanese and all that. So I actually studied a lot of kanji in high school, and I took a kanken, like a kanji kente. And then I passed Sankyu, I think. Yeah. So, and then I also took this computer class, additional computer class. And Wapuro?
It sounds familiar, but
I forgot the word, like the actual word, but it was like the thing you did 10 years ago, like
WordPress?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, the website building, or
maybe Wapuro Kente they called it. But yeah, I took that as well, and yeah, so I got to do a lot of things. I think there was even like shodo class, calligraphy class.
You mentioned studying a lot of extra kanji and taking this class for advanced kanji studying. When foreigners come to Japan, or maybe also living abroad and are interested in Japanese, there are many methods. You should learn kanji by doing this. You should learn kanji by doing that. How are kanji taught to Japanese students in Japanese school?
You just keep writing them
again and again and
again and again and again, and like every single day, you at least write 100 a day. That's how you do it. Just memorize. You frickin' do it. You just frickin' do it. It's like haikore, and then every single day, like new kanji, every single. You just write them, read like every single day. So that's how you should do it.
Is it
there's
like
no easy way?
Kanji by kanji, or do you put them in context? Like with sometimes 2 kanji get combined, but in many, many different ways, and they always have different yomikata ways of being pronounced. Do you learn them like this in context, and this is a word, or do you just learn the kanji and the verb?
I think they first teach the one, but when you learn one, they will also have like a word next to it and say, oh, that's the kanji we learned before. And when you combine these two, it becomes this word. Like, so they just keep adding one kanji, and like they just kind of build it up. So yeah, it all happens at the same time, like context, like one new kanji. So think every class we learned at least 5 new kanjis. I think maybe I forgot. Yeah, it's been 20 years or more than 20 years. But yeah, so we just start from the age of 6. Ich, ni, san. From yon, it's suddenly like, whoa, that's a
Suddenly
lot.
more strokes.
Go, So yeah, but there's no easy way to learn kanji. I think you just need to like actually focus and like do it every day.
You have like certain kanjis that you're supposed to learn by a certain age, right? I think depending on the grades you go through.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a shogakuse elementary school kanji level, and then so the test I passed, I think it was up to like high school level, so like 3,000 kanjis. I can't really write them anymore though because we're all texting these days, but I can at least read 3,000 kanjis. Actually, more than my friends, my Japanese friends. Like they're like, "Why do you know that word? How can you read that kanji?" Like whenever I send a text to my friends, they're like, "How do you read that kanji?" I'm like, "Why don't you know?" So, and I love reading a lot of Japanese books. I love reading books from the 70s and 80s. And the words they use in those books are a bit old, but it's beautiful. Really nice, beautiful words. And I know those words, and I love using them in like a normal conversation.
Any recommendations for books or authors?
I mean, I always read like Mira Ayako, like she's a Christian author, but it's not really Christian based books, but it's she's really good at depicting ugly human emotions. So it's very deep, like ugly human emotions, but at the same time, it's so beautiful how she writes it and like how people navigate through life and all that. So I love Miura Ayako, but it's not for everybody, but she's huge in Japan. She's very famous. You know the TV show Shoten?
No.
Okay. So there's this really famous show, Shoten. But that show comes from her book, Hyoten. So Hyoten is like ice point. But Shoten means laugh point. So they just changed. So it's that famous. So I was reading Miura Ayako, but I don't think any people in my generation, they don't really read.
More like modern manga.
Yeah, manga. And
modern novelist. It's quite.
I never liked manga actually. It was too much for me. It was like too like animated, and it's just too fake for me. Yeah.
You go through high school and you kind of have to decide where you take your career. And nowadays you focus mostly on content creation, but you did quite a bit in between. Mm-hmm. Before we started recording, you told me that you actually did a lot of acting for commercials and so on. How did you get into that?
I started modeling when I was a baby. Actually, my first modeling gig was for Ito Yokado, the department store. And so I started modeling when I was a baby. Then when I was in middle school, I think I was like, I want to go back to modeling, Mom. Like, what can I do? And she was like, oh, you were actually signed up with this agency before. Why not go back to them and maybe you can do something. So I think when I was in middle school, I visited this agency by myself in Tokyo, and I re-registered. And then nothing happened, but I think the second year of high school, I decided to sign up with all these agencies, like foreign talent agencies in Tokyo. So I just rang them up. I was like, can I sign up? Can I sign up? Can I sign up? And I think I at least signed up with 10 agencies in Tokyo as a freelancer. Then at third year of high school, at the end, you get all of February off, I think.
Just before the big final exams?
Right after.
Okay.
Right after the exams, I think you get like a month off. I think that's when I started. Or maybe that's when I started. That's when I started. Then I went to New Zealand for 1 month. Then when I came back, I started doing like extra jobs. and all these acting gigs, commercials, auditions, modeling, and all that. I just kept going. And I started getting bigger roles, and I did a lot of commercials, and I went on TV shows and all that. Yeah.
What are some of the roles or TV shows you enjoy doing the most?
TV shows. I mean, I once did this commercial for Mount Rainier coffee, and I was that main guy that was just like crazy and like just being super expressive. And my role was Italian. I was supposed to be Italian.
You look very Italian.
Really, thank you. Grazie. No, I know I don't, but I was like screaming "Soy latte" or something into the sky, you know. And so that was really fun because I was the main guy, and I was able to express myself more than just an extra role, because when you're an extra, you're just in the back and you're not really important. But when you're the main guy, you can be as expressive as you want. But when I did a commercial for Dragon Quest, I was one of the main person, and the setting was in a high school sports club room, bushitsu, you call it. And so three Japanese guys and one white guy. That was like the funny thing about the commercial. But that was my reality in high school, right? And then the director during shooting, when he was like cut, and he came up to us and he was like, "It's still very funny that there's a white guy in this scene. It's so funny. It's just shoot it." He used the word shoot it, surrealism. It was like, it's so funny, but in my mind, I'm like, this was my reality. Like, this was my life. So how dare you say it's funny? But I get it. I know the humor of this country. I know how they think and all that. So, but at the same time, it was kind of like, in 2022, a commercial director thinks this is funny. I'm like, wow, Japan's so behind. And then 2 months later, I moved back to London.
You had that experience on the commercial shoot. Have you ever had this during your school education, or were all the teachers and students were you just a student at the school and like everyone else?
Teachers never really mention how different I looked. They never, ever mentioned. They treated me like other students, like no teacher ever asked my background. Like, they never cared. Or I guess they knew from other people, because the church that my grandfather made was in the same city. So maybe they knew that I was from that church, maybe, I don't know. But my friends, they always made me feel like a foreigner, or they made these comments that I look different, or you're a foreigner. Or whenever we got in a fight, my friends would be like, go back to your country, you know. But I'm like, my house is literally there. Like, I grew up in that house. Where do you want me to go back to? UK, New Zealand, Australia, pick one country, you know. So I never knew what to say to those comments. Like, and then they all thought it was always funny. Like, they always thought I was from the UK or something, or America. But I don't think, none of my friends actually knew that even my parents were from Japan. So I never really explained either, or I don't think they really understood my background. So, and they didn't really show interest. So it was in a way, it was more natural. Like, it was like they just treated me like a local sometimes.
It's interesting though that there's also no asking, and especially you're like third generation now, right? Mm-hmm. Which is pretty rare, I would say, to kind of keep the lineage in the foreign country, and nobody kind of moves away somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they didn't really ask you. But it's good to also hear that they kind of just accepted you and treated you without anything like that. But that director, he kind of 2022 still brings that up, and thereafter you moved to the UK. Was this the first time for you to move back abroad after the whole education in Japan?
So I think in 2017, I visited the UK for the first time, very first time in my life. So my British passport entered the UK for the first time in 2017, and I went to London. But my initial reaction was like, oh my gosh, like, thank God I'm not from here. Thank God I grew up in Tokyo, because London in March was dark, gloomy, and I thought London would be more of a futuristic, more high tech city for some reason. And I entered the city from the north because I took a taxi from the airport, and we kind of ran around N25. We went in from the north, and the scenery I saw was like these small houses, tiny houses stuck to each other, and like they didn't really look pretty either. I was like, what's going on? Like, this is not the London I imagined. I was like, oh my gosh,
the British Machia.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh. But I had a good time in London. But I was like, thank God I can go back to Tokyo. But around that time, I kind of got depressed in 2018. Yeah. Then I was like, I need to get out of Japan. I really need to get out of Japan. I knew I had to change something. So I was like, oh, maybe I can live in the UK, and I randomly chose Brighton, UK, like a coastal city. And I think on the first day in Brighton, my depression just went away right away. It was just for some reason. I just had a really good time in Brighton. I would like go to London every other weekend, and London really grew on me. I was like, oh, there's so much more to London. There's so much you can do, like so many interesting people. And I was able to be myself in London more. I was able to just express myself, and people just saw me as Joshua, not a foreigner. It was just like Joshua. Joshua's a funny guy. Joshua is an interesting guy. He's from Japan. It wasn't about my looks or about how I look. It was just like who's Joshua inside. So it was a really nice experience, and nobody really pigeonholed me either. So it was just a nice experience. And then the following year, I decided to enroll into this university in London for like 6 months. Then COVID happened, so I just went back to Japan, and then I was back in Japan for 2 years. Then I started doing acting again, then a commercial. Then I went back to London again for 2 years. And then I recently came back.
Yes, spending time between both. You do a lot of work on community building and kind of also sharing the stories of other foreigners that were born and raised here in Japan, or Hafu and so on. What made you want to go into this and kind of try to emphasize these stories and kind of share everyone's experience?
So my dad lives in Sendai. And when COVID happened, I moved back to Tokyo from London. Then I decided to stay with my dad during COVID. I mean, he still lives with us in Tokyo from time to time, but for work reasons, he has to be in Sendai. And when I was living with my dad in Sendai, I had so much time and I had so much headspace. And then I was like, and then I think I was interviewed by this Japanese American lady the past year. And then we kind of talked about our identities and how it was like to grow up in a country that you're not the majority and all that. And I think I wanted to do the same thing as she was doing. And then I was like, I know so many interesting non-East Asian looking Japanese people in Japan. So I was like, oh, maybe I can start interviewing them. We have so many things to talk about. We have so many stories to share. So I started this podcast during COVID, and I just started interviewing all my friends, and then we just talked freely and blah, blah, blah. Then it was interesting. The same year, I got a job, and they sent me to Okinawa. And when I got to Okinawa, I suggested to the company if I can promote the company through a radio station. And then there was this community FM thingy in Naha. And then they were accepting a lot of people, interesting people. And I went to the radio station and I passed the audition, and I was like, oh, maybe I can do the same thing as my podcast. So I started interviewing other people like me in Okinawa. I would have them in the studio, and like it was like kind of like this. So I did that for 2 months. Then I was like, I decided to go back to Tokyo. I quit that company, really toxic company. Then I went back. When I was going back to Tokyo, my cousin, she was starting a YouTube channel. Then I was like, maybe I can be the producer. Maybe I can give you ideas and I can like coordinate things, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, maybe we can interview people like us. Like maybe we can talk about all these like international topics with you. So we started doing that, and that really kind of went viral. And then I went independent. I started my English YouTube channel initially, but it was doing okay, but it wasn't going as big as my cousin's channel. Then I moved to London. Then a few months in, I started my Japanese channel. And that really took off. Like it was like instant. It was like.
And this is kind of where you are today, right? You still do this podcast. You still interview those people and kind of share the stories.
Yeah.
You said something interesting that this Japanese American reporter that interviewed you, I think back in Sendai,
when I was in London, but she was in the US. Yeah.
She specified, I know a lot of non-East Asian looking people like you. Is there a big difference in experience between foreign looking, as in like more European, Western looking foreigners growing up in Japan, and Asian looking foreigners growing up in Japan?
Sorry, what was your question?
Is there a big difference in experience between like European and Western looking foreigners that grow up in Japan and like Asian looking foreigners that grow up in Japan?
I think there's a huge difference. I feel like if you look East Asian, people automatically see you as Japanese almost, unless you dress very differently or like you look very non-Japanese. But when you look European or non-East Asian, people of course assume you're not from Japan. And it's all about the information you get from looks initially, right? So they come in with this presumption that you're not from Japan. So whatever you say, they don't believe you initially. They don't process whatever you say. So it is, I don't want to say easier, but people see you as Japanese, more Japanese if you look closer to Japanese people.
So in other words, in your case, till today, maybe you meet Japanese people for whatever occasion, introduce yourself in Japanese and say, oh, I was born here in Tokyo and went to school there, and they are like, are you joking?
Are you joking, or are you taking a piss, or it's like every single time, every single interaction is like that. And even like I have to kind of lie to myself that I'm just visiting Japan to keep that sanity, because I'm like, wait, I'm from Japan, but it's like I'm always confused. I'm still confused. Like my looks and my experience or my inside doesn't really match. So every time somebody treats me like a foreigner, I'm like, why am I explaining myself? I'm like, I don't even have to explain myself. But at the same time, I had the same experience as them. I have the same education. So I know how they view foreigners. I know how they think. So it's like, it's very strange. Like I can see myself. I see myself as an outsider, if that makes sense.
Have you seen any change in this perception over the last few decades that you kind of grew up here? And do people mentality change, adapt, the comments change, or is it still kind of exactly the same?
I think the past 5 years, they really worked on that part where they, even like half the people, like half non-Japanese people, I think they really, a lot of sports, like athletes, a lot of like half black people came about, or like half the talentos and all that, and they really tried to show show the nation that they are Japanese. They're in fact they're either of the parent is just foreigner. So I think the media is trying to show that, but still they have a hard time seeing them as fully Japanese. They, even after telling them we're born and raised in Japan, they're still like, oh, so when do you go back to your country? Like, so is Japanese your first language? Is it English? Like, I just want to tell them it's same as you. Like, whatever experience you had, it'll be the same for me. And a lot of Hafu people, they really struggle, like, because their mom or their dad's actually Japanese. So they basically grew up in a Japanese household in Japan, only going to Japanese school. And people still treat them like a foreigner. I'm like, how? I can't even imagine how that feels. So yeah, and in Japan, if you don't look fully Japanese, they think there's no way you can speak Japanese. There's no way. And like maybe older people, but they really think Japanese isn't a learnable language. Like, even like Europeans speak Japanese now. Like a lot of Europeans like yourself, like it's a learnable language, but people maybe 50 plus, they truly believe that Japanese language is only like it's only it's a language that's only that's allowed, almost allowed to, how do you say it, like it's a language that only Japanese people can speak, or that's allowed to speak it, you know?
Do you think that general perception of foreigners, or kind of assumption that, well, if you look slightly different, you're probably not Japanese, you probably don't speak Japanese, is going to change in the future? That there's going to be more of a, I'm not going to make any assumption on that person until I know where that person is from, and then just accept them for whatever their story is?
Yeah, I feel like it's changing a lot right now. And a lot of my viewers are Japanese, like 50% are Japanese. And they're sometimes they're like, I try not to assume where that person's from. I really try, or I just stick to speaking Japanese, even though if they don't look fully Japanese, I just stick to Japanese if I'm in Japan. So I do see that change happening. And I feel like my channel's really helping people understand the experience of us non-East Asian looking Japanese people. So I get a lot of comments saying like it's also a new concept for Japanese people, that they don't really understand that if you grow up in a country, even though you don't look Japanese, you become Japanese. They really don't have that perception. They really don't have that sense of understanding. So I really do think I'm contributing to that awareness that if you're born and raised in a country, you become a person from that country. Yeah. To Europeans or Americans, it might sound very simple, very, very simple concept. But people here, it's rocket science.
It is a very simple concept, but also kind of depends on the experience of the self, I think. It can change. Some people might be born and raised somewhere, but still don't necessarily identify with that country, even though they have received education and so on. So it is a very personal experience as well.
Sure.
So for you, now what's next? What are your projects that you're working on that you would like to kind of create? You have your channel, you have an audience, you're kind of raising awareness, doing community building and sharing your experience. What are some of the things you want to do next?
I want to go big. So I just do YouTube and very simple videos right now and short videos, but I want to go big. I'm trying to make a documentary. I want to get a bigger production. I also do comedy, right, on Instagram and stuff. So I want to go big. I want to make like a proper series and all that. And
you kind of create your own little production studio and make these bigger projects you have in mind. Yeah. Will this documentary also be about this experience of foreigners or foreign-born children in Japan?
I have this idea. I haven't really started it, but I work for so many Japanese companies the past 10 years while doing the modeling and all that. And I have so many messed up stories, so many funny, interesting stories from working at a Japanese company. And I just want to reenact those scenes in a comedic way. And so I'm trying to make a whole series about my experience working at Japanese companies, and I think it will be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. You got me hooked already, because I think you have this unique opportunity to fully understand what's going on at the company, fully understand what's going on, and still be somehow seen as an outsider, and that can lead to, I imagine, a lot of very absurd situations.
Yeah, like I can tell you one story, but I was working at McDonald's next to my high school, and I was we also had drive-through, and this customer came to the front, he paid, and I was talking to my colleague, and the point card thingy, like a loyalty card thingy wasn't working. So my colleague was asking me how to do it. Like I was like, and I referred to the customer as in a really casual way or something. Or like I was just talking to her in a very casual way. Same age, good friends, very casual. But when I started talking to the customer, he was like, "Why were you talking about me in a very casual way? Like, that's so rude or something." I just said, "Sorry, I'm just still learning Japanese. Like, please forgive me." But he was still like, "Kiotsukeroyo, be careful." But
so you have the card you can use to your advantage.
Yeah, so I did use those cards sometimes. I was like, "How can I get out of this?" Like, I was just like, "I'm still studying Japanese. Forgive me," But I was just like very, I don't know. I was maybe a little sassy, maybe rude. But I had to do something to get out of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Joshua, for sharing your story, going through Japanese school and growing up here in Japan. And hopefully we'll see a lot of your work in the next few months.
I hope so
too. The documentary and the many stories from your experience working at Japanese company. Yep. Thank you for making time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.